All right, we want to get back to the Twitter poll. We asked you a question earlier, just a short time ago, about who you believe will improve your daily commute. Let's look at the numbers. A little more interesting here and a little closer with this question. We have Doug Ford at 43%. He has so far led all of the Twitter polling. Again, not scientific. This is what is being discussed on Twitter right now. But Andrea Horwath came in a very close second at 38%. Kathleen Wynne trailing behind at 19%. We had 5,500 people vote in this. Okay, let's go to our last poll of the night. This is what we want to talk about now. We asked you before the debate started, who had your vote going into this debate? Right now, we want to ask, after watching this City Vote debate, who has your vote right now? We want to know if this has changed your mind. What you heard the candidates say today, did that change your mind? So let's activate this poll. This one will also be active for 10 minutes. Also interesting to note that the hashtag CityVote is actually trending worldwide. So keep that discussion going. Vote now at our poll at CityNews. You have 10 minutes.
Welcome back to the Senator Restaurant. We have been having a very interesting conversation with this great panel on Facebook Live. And now we just want to do a little bit of a post-mortem. What do you guys think? Do you think that anybody came out the clear victor here, Desmond?
I think Andrea Horwath probably came out the best and clearest. There weren't a lot of specifics tonight, but when she was specific, particularly, for example, on the question of opioid use and how to deal with that, she was very clear. She sounded convicted. She gave specific details about why she believed what she believed. We didn't hear a lot of that tonight, like, why do you believe what you believe? And when she did that, I thought she was much more effective than anybody else.
Right.
Actually.
What about you, Jody Emery?
Well, I heard a lot of topics discussed and that they would do something about it to make you happy, but not the real meat behind it. Like, the cover sounds good, but there's nothing in the book. What's behind that? And for me personally, I really like the positivity I saw from Andrea, that at least it's optimistic and hopeful and a smile, which is so good to see amongst all the arguing and yelling. But for me personally, I believe Doug Ford's talking points, his closing statements, those nice little sound bites, that resonates with me, but not with respect to a lot of the background behind it. And that, again, we have a lot of questions about how are you going to do these things? How are you going to give people their money back? How are you going to make sure there's more efficiency in spending? That's what I want to know. How do we keep more of the money that we're earning? How does government spend less of it in a wasteful way? And how do they prioritize spending to make more efficient choices?
And if you don't have those details, can you actually believe them?
No. We'll wait and see what they say in the next couple weeks, too.
Murtaza Haider?
I'm pleasantly surprised to see Andrea did really well. If I were to just look at the three people who spoke today in this debate, I think she had a good day, a good evening today. But at the same time, she also had some specifics. She picked up issues that resonate with the electorate. For example, the dental care. Nobody mentioned it. She did. So she mentioned buses. In the entire debate, they were just busy talking about subways and spending $190 billion of taxpayers' money, as Liberals are doing. But she was the one who said, no, buses are also important. In fact, buses are the reason why subways move. They can't move without them. So in terms of the way she carried herself, much more confident. She had the most to lose in the last election. And I think tonight was a good night for her.
Well, we will also discuss if anybody's vote here could have been changed by this debate. We'll be back.
All right, it's far cry from the start of the show at 5 o'clock when we had a huge crowd occupying all around the building. It's thinned out a little, but they're still enthusiastic. Everybody obviously having their own decisions on who may have won. Was there a knockout punch delivered? But nothing much has changed. Now he's just jumping in because they want to be in here. Hang on, I'm gonna wait. Come here a sec. You're from Ontario. You didn't watch the debate. You're not with any party. Who were you? Who would you vote for?
Kathleen.
Kathleen? Why's that?
Because she's good. She's good. I like her.
And he literally isn't. He just jumped in and grabbed a sign. He's not from here. But a lot of people we spoke to on the street, they're kind of iffy on who to vote for still. It's still much of a toss-up. With us still, it's still a long way to go. We've got a month, of course, before the election. And these guys have all decided to vote. We'll see what everybody else wants to do over the next month.
All right, I'm joined now by John Stahl, who is the political specialist with 680 News. You've been analyzing politics. I'm not even going to say for how long, but you are a veteran analyst of politics. What did you make of this debate? Who was the winner? Who was the loser?
Well, I think it was a great debate. I think Doug Ford was the winner. The loser was Kathleen Wynne. And Andrea Horvath, I thought, came in a very strong second. And although I think we could put Horvath as almost winning in the sense that if we're looking for who among these three were able to change any voter's mind who may have been undecided going in, I think she was able to do that on her performance.
And the question is, can she steal Liberal voters for perhaps potential strategic voting?
That is the key question between now and Election Day. There'll be a couple more debates to go, and she needs to close that gap. But she's the only one that has the room to grow. I think Doug held on to his base. He wins because he was able to very successfully continue to hammer that Liberal record that is very hard to defend without saying something so ridiculously controversial that the whole media coverage and consequence of this debate is what he said out here instead of just his simple messaging. Friends, I guarantee you this, I promise you this, no detail, no trouble, just everything she's doing is wrong. She's looking after her cronies. It's very Ford-like in the presentation, and not as Trump-like as some might have thought.
Right, as what he has been accused of being like. Now, I have to tell you that behind us, where the camera is, each of the leaders will be coming out momentarily, one at a time, to give us their perspective of how they did and how their opponents did. In the meantime, I was concerned initially about Doug Ford. I thought that he came across as very nervous, and it took him some time to warm up. In fact, I think in one of the debates, he didn't say a single word.
Right, and he was actually more nervous before we went on the air than after the camera started to roll, because I could watch him in the room. But I think he knew there was a lot at stake here.
Yes.
Even though he has a loaded gun, and he does have a large lead by all the polls, because that anti-Liberal time for change vote is so strong and so high, he would really have to do something outrageous to lose the kind of distance that he has. I think the Conservatives could win with anybody at this stage, and he just has to make sure he doesn't go off the deep end.
And he did not have a major blunder. And I have to say, too, he was at a disadvantage because this was his first provincial debate. Right. Kathleen Wynne, Andrea Horvath have had many under their belts. They're seasoned at this.
I think he'll get criticized if he does it all for not answering questions. The way Andrea Horvath was more successful than I think Kathleen Wynne was in confronting him, saying, you know, Doug, you're just using generalities. I mean, what do you mean by that? Of course there's going to be cuts. Of course there are going to be consequences. You know, you're looking after your cronies. She was at least trying to hold him to account. But if you really parse this out, apart from the transit announcement that he made about $5 billion, and that was new for a regional transit system, he really didn't give any detail to any of the questions that were asked about the 4%, you know, and how many jobs are going to get lost. He just very casually, very Ford-like, and they've learned this from the campaign at City Hall. Just turn it around. Well, you know, 4%, I ask everybody across the province, they think, why not more? Kathleen, you did A, B, C. I'll tell you what I'm not going to do is go after that hydro guy, or I'm going to get that hydro guy. That $6 million man. People love that.
I thought Andrea Horvath, who is about to come out momentarily, had some really good moments where she just let the two of them bicker, and then she would look at the camera and say, this is what the problem is. Yeah. And here she comes now. Let's see what she has to say about this debate.
Andrea, you just finished the first live debate exclusively on City. A poll in Maclean's today had you at about 30% second place. What do you do to build momentum and shed the moniker, the opinion of some, that the NDP can't win with you at the helm?
Well, you know, I think it's pretty clear in tonight's debate. And first of all, thank you for City TV for hosting us and giving the people of Ontario a chance to see what they have in terms of choices for the future of our province. And I think tonight was an opportunity to show people that what we've done for the last couple of decades doesn't have to continue. You don't have to keep bouncing between the Liberals and the Conservatives and watch life just get harder for everyday families. And that's what our campaign's about. It's about giving people the opportunity to choose change for the better, to make life better for everyday families. Not deep cuts to services like Mr. Ford's offering, not the lack of attention to so many issues that Kathleen Wynne has given us, you know, hallway medicine, a crisis in our long-term care system, people who can't get their prescriptions filled or their teeth fixed, schools that are falling apart around our children's ears. It doesn't have to be that way, and this campaign is really about change. but people have to think carefully. What kind of change do you want?
There was a question. There was a question today.
Questions about what he would cut. He didn't get a specific answer. What do you take from that?
Well, I mean, there's a couple of things. Mr. Ford needs to do the right thing by the people of Ontario and be upfront about what he is planning on cutting. He avoids that question like the plague, but people deserve to know. Look, Mr. Hudak was honest with Ontarians. Mr. Harris was honest with Ontarians. Heck, Mr. Harper was honest with Ontarians, or with Canadians, about what he was going to cut and how he was going to tackle deficits. Mr. Ford needs to step up to the plate. He needs to, have the guts to tell people exactly what it is that he has in store. Because I can tell you this, and there's no doubt in my mind, anything that he claims in terms of savings for everyday families is really going to mean deep cuts that are going to hurt. They're going to be very painful and going to leave families in a much worse position. He's not even being truthful about his tax cut for low-income families. What he's saying is you won't get a raise, but you'll get a tax cut. But what he's leaving out is the fact that people will be better off with the $15 minimum wage than the tax cut that he's providing. And what he's not talking about is the fact that the biggest tax cuts that he's got in store are for the richest people in our province and the wealthiest corporations. And what I'm going to do that's different than that is I'm going to ask those same folks to donate a little bit more, to give a little bit more in taxes so that we can make sure that every person that needs a dental checkup and a filling can get that filling done, that our seniors can live with dignity in long-term care and not be in a situation where literally they have bed sores that fester to the point of going septic and ending up in hospital, and sometimes people don't even make it. That should not be happening in a province like Ontario in 2018.
Andrea, several times during the debate, Doug Ford basically seemed to check out, like he just literally did not talk for significant chunks of it. What's your sense of what was going on there? Is it grasp of policy? What's happening?
Well, I really don't know, and you're going to have an opportunity to ask Mr. Ford what his strategy was in that regard. But I believe that this debate and the ones that are upcoming are an opportunity to show the people of Ontario what your plans are. The last thing that we need in this province is someone sitting in the Premier's chair who is not honest and upfront about what their plans are. We've seen the disappointment in Kathleen Wynne and the Liberals because they bought one thing, they sold people one thing, and then when they formed government, something else completely occurred. That's why people are fed up with Kathleen Wynne and the Liberals. We don't need that to happen again with Mr. Ford. So I would hope that the next debate, he uses all of his airtime to explain to people exactly what he has in store.
Thanks very much. Welcome back to the Senator Restaurant. We have some questions for our panel here. I want to know if you feel as though some topics, even if they were addressed, were not addressed to the degree that you would have liked to see, and maybe in general in the election, are we not seeing some issues that you feel like should be more front and center?
There are two things that come to mind for me, neither of which got mentioned this evening. One is the issue of sexual assault and sexual harassment. It's been such a big issue in this country. It's been a huge issue among provincial politicians of all parties, and I find it shocking that the violence being done to women, particularly by people in office and in government, is not a conversation. The other thing I would love to hear more about over the course of this campaign, the child welfare system. Our province has the power to take children away from their families, and we know that that disproportionately affects poor people, Black people, Indigenous communities also. We know the history of residential schools. I think we should be talking about that, because when you have the power to take people's kids away from them, you're changing their whole lives. Those decisions really matter. And we're spending a lot of money on child welfare that could be going to help parents keep their families together.
And Jody, I mean, you've got a lot of thoughts about the whole cannabis issue.
Well, we see in other jurisdictions in the United States and around the world that when cannabis legalization is discussed and put forward, things happen quickly. You see immediate revenue being generated. You see businesses being encouraged to set up. Colorado is a great example where they allowed the existing industry to become legal and regulated. Ontario is missing out on an enormous opportunity. The taxpayers of this province deserve to have local businesses run by their local communities, giving back to the community, generating tax tax revenue, creating these opportunities for the people who have traditionally been excluded from finding job opportunities. But we're not seeing that. And when the government looks to sell cannabis themselves, they're denying us all sorts of job opportunities in tourism, in entertainment, in agriculture. You can even use hemp and cannabis in cars and houses and clothing. So cannabis could create so many jobs, but when the government seeks to restrict and limit it and demonize it and say it's a dangerous thing for our kids, that's denying us so many opportunities that we should be talking about more in depth.
So Doug Ford could have had your vote if he'd stuck with the free open market thing.
He came out and said free market, and then he switched his mind. But it just tells you the alcohol lobby has a lot of money in this province, and we should be promoting the safer choice. Cannabis is safer than alcohol and opioids.
Murtaza Haider.
Now, the focus of this debate was more on sort of urban issues, but even if you look at the urban economy, you look at Toronto, you look at the jobs, and you realize that in the past 3 years or so, most jobs created in the city of Toronto, it happens to be the most sophisticated employment market in Canada, they were part-time jobs.
I'm so sorry, I have to cut you off. Kathleen Wynne is about to speak.
Let's hear her. She takes priority.
It was a great opportunity to have a chance to talk about some of the substantial issues in response to really important questions that were asked.
More than 8,000 people on our exclusive poll at CityNews on Twitter. Only 14 people say that you won tonight's debate. Andrea Horwath has 43%, Doug Ford has 39%. You have lost, according to the people here in this poll. What are you going to do to try and get your campaign on track and win an election many people believe you've already lost?
Well, you know what? There have been, I think, 2 polls today. This is another one. They all say different things, and we're going to continue to work to make sure that people understand what we've done to build this province up. And I had a chance to talk tonight about some of the care initiatives, the supports that we have put in place and will put in place, but also about the economy and also, you know, how strong the economy in Ontario is. I'm going to continue to talk about that across this province, and people will make their decision.
Mais comment vous allez convaincre les gens, comment vous allez défendre votre bilan alors que les gens semblent vouloir du changement?
Je peux seulement dire c'est ce que nous avons fait et je peux seulement dire c'est ce que nous savons est nécessaire pour l'avenir, pour bâtir la province, pour investir dans les gens, dans les Ontariens et les Ontariennes, pour assurer que nous avons un avenir fort ici en Ontario.
Est-ce que vous sentez que c'est difficile de faire entendre votre message dans le contexte actuel?
Sorry,
Est-ce que c'est difficile? Est-ce que vous sentez une résistance de la part des gens?
C'est difficile à dire. Nous avons beaucoup des opportunités dans cette campagne pour parler avec les citoyens dans les régions, dans toute la province, et c'est le bénéfice d'une élection campagne.
There was a comment with Doug Ford that you had a nice smile. What did you make of that?
Well, I said he had a nice smile as well. You know, I think that there are many of us who have come to maybe expect that kind of comment, that kind of behavior. I think that it's disappointing. It's not, I think, part of a substantial discussion of policy. But you'll have to ask him what his intention was in that.
Mr. Ford asked you, when did you lose your way in government, essentially suggesting that you are no longer fighting and speaking for the people that you promised to when you took office. Several polls seem to suggest that he might have hit the nail on the head there with the electorate, that they think the same way.
Well, I got into politics to put in place supports for people. I got involved in provincial politics because I believed that the education policies of the previous Conservative government were ripping apart our publicly funded education system, were devastating our municipalities and our healthcare system. And I got into office, I ran for office in order to be part of a government that would rebuild those things. That's what we've been doing. And since I've been Premier, I have continued to build this province. You know, I talked tonight about the economy. The economy is doing better than most of the other provinces, better than the United States. We've got an unemployment rate that is the best that it's been in 2 decades. But we know that there's more that people need. And so the plan that we've put forward builds on the supports that we've already put in place. But look, it's about making sure that people have the mental health supports that they need, that families can find childcare, that students can find post-secondary education. That's what people are saying they need, and that's what we are going to work to put in place.
There was a question asked tonight by a member of the public asking for what kind of supports you would put in place for around safe injection sites. None of the leaders actually answered the question. City News has found across the street at St. Michael's Choir School, syringes around the children's school. What kind of supports would you put in place around safe injection sites that are opening in the city right now?
Well, one of the things that we have done is work with the folks who are running that safe injection site at Moss Park to get that into a permanent building, to move it out of the park, because I think that's a reasonable thing to suggest, that it shouldn't be in a park. But we're going to look at the evidence and make sure that we work to prevent addiction in the first place, put more supports in place, but also to save people's lives. And that's what safe injection sites are about.
Safety support, though, for people that live around these safe injection sites.
Well, I think moving that safe injection site out of a park, that's the first step, to make sure that is not where it takes place, and to work with the police services, because the mayor has been very much a part of that concern around the location. Make sure that we make sure the municipality has the supports that they need to keep the community safe.
Okay. Before we close safe injection sites.
I'm so sorry.
Okay.
You have to look at the evidence.
Okay, let's get to the Twitter results here from our polling. So going into the debate today, we asked, who has your vote right now? We already told you the results. 42% said Doug Ford, 27% said Andrea Horwath, in third place, Kathleen Wynne. It very much reflected an earlier poll that was released this morning by Polera and Maclean's. Let's go to now, 8,700 people voted in our final poll, which was after watching the city vote debate. Who has your vote right now? And look what happened. Andrea Horwath on this Twitter poll, which is non-scientific, took the lead here with 43%. Doug Ford, close second with 39%. Kathleen Wynne's support, though, dropped way down to 14%. And that was the basis of the question that Adrian asked to Kathleen Wynne.
$1 billion that I'm putting into mental health and addiction. We're going to fund it properly. And one of the things when I've talked to families across Ontario about addiction, that they don't have beds available. We will make sure there's beds, housing support available for anyone with addictions. We'll give them the resources. You know, there's one thing we had in common, all three of us. We all want to save lives, and we just might have a different way of trying to save lives. They believe in injection sites. I don't believe in injection sites. I believe in rehabilitation. I believe in making sure that the people have the support there and get off drugs. And that's my goal.
Do you close them right away, though? Would you close injection sites right away?
Well, again, I would make sure, my friends. Absolutely. I do anything that we do is responsible. I will go in there and I'll talk to the experts. But what I will do, out of the $1.9 billion, I'm going to make sure we have proper funding for rehabilitation centers. Rehabilitation centers, in some cases, cost $1,000 a day. Not everyone can afford $1,000 a day. So we'll make sure that we support the people that need support, that need help, because every single family, every one of you here, standing here today, knows a family, a friend that has some form of addiction. It's just the way it is. It's unfortunate. Go ahead.
Your party approved of Tanya Granick-Allen as a candidate. Why did you dump her?
Well, you know, we have a big tent, but again, we have all different views, and we're open to all different views, but those views have to be respectful, and we don't believe some of the things that Tanya mentioned were respectful. It's not about, you know, agreeing on this or agreeing on that. we just didn't believe it came across as in a respectful manner, and we have to respect each other no matter what views we have, because everyone has different views, but some of those were disturbing, so we're going to move on. We're going to focus on what the taxpayers want, and I'll tell you what the taxpayers want. They want lower hydro rates, they want jobs, they want to make sure there's accountability, transparency, and integrity when it comes to their government. And right now, over the last 15 years, we've seen anything but accountability and transparency.
Doug, there are many people. Doug, you just finished up the first leadership debate right here exclusively on City, though there are still many people who believe that you could be unpredictable as a leader, potentially even dangerous. What would you do to change their minds?
Well, you can watch me. I've been crisscrossing the province. We're going to be responsible. I think I have an incredible team, a great caucus, an absolutely great caucus, and we're going to be responsible with the taxpayers' money. By no means are we're going to do anything that will disrespect the taxpayers. That's all we're going to do, is make sure that we hold bureaucrats and all politicians, even our own party, accountable when it comes to spending taxpayers' money. We aren't going to be the most indebted region, subnational debt in the entire world, like we are right now. It's $346 billion of debt, which is staggering. The deficit, we're going to make sure we work with the Auditor General, that we have clean books. We aren't going to mislead the people. As we all know, the Liberals and Kathleen Wynne, they were cooking the books on the taxpayers. It's unheard of. Matter of fact, in 30 years, I've never seen any government of any stripe cook the books like Kathleen Wynne has.
Mr. Ford, you were...
Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
$5 billion in transit funding tonight, but there wasn't a lot of detail there. That's a lot of money. Can you explain anything more about that?
Sure, I'll explain a couple things. What we're going to do is make sure that we put $5 billion into Toronto, GTA, and the surrounding areas. We're going to spend $5 billion. One of the items is going to be two-way go all the way to Niagara. We're going to make sure that we continue to loop along Scarborough and actually deliver proper transit for once in their lifetime for the people of Scarborough, the 630,000 people that have been ignored by this provincial government. We'll finish off the loop. We're going to do the downtown relief line. We'll upload the subway system up to the province. TTC will still operate it, but when it comes to build and design, it won't be the TTC. But I can assure all TTC workers we're going to expand it. And by the way, I want to give a shout out to all the TTC workers. I support you 100%. They're great, they're frontline people, and they do an incredible job. But we're going to make sure that we get rapid transit out to the areas of the GTA, be it Richmond Hill. We're going to continue on the loop for the Scarborough, and we're going to actually bring subways, proper transit system for the first time ever back to Toronto and the GTA, and start building a regional transportation system. I always say it's important. It's not just Toronto, it's Toronto and the GTA. It's going to be a regional transportation system that you can get on somewhere in Toronto, and you're going to end up in the 905 somewhere in a rapid fashion. So the GTA, get ready for a great subway system coming to your way soon. Thank you.
All right, John Stahl, I'm going to sum up my thoughts. Doug Ford did not blow it. He did not make a major blunder. Andrea Horwath may have wooed over some Liberal voters who are thinking of strategic voting, and Kathleen Wynne has an uphill battle.
I'm with you all the way. I think Andrea Horwath comes out of this with more momentum, possibility, than any of the other candidates. I think she should be more direct in closing statements and everywhere else, just saying, you know what, everybody's tired of this Liberal government. Some of you are afraid of Doug Ford. I get it. I know you're wondering whether I'm the guy you can trust. I can come this way and do it. And if she can connect the way Doug does with his base, she'll have a good campaign.
Do you see Kathleen Wynne able to come out of this?
I don't at all. I see no growth for the Liberal Party and Kathleen Wynne here. I do not think she performed very well. She's tried to stay to policy and record, and that's a pretty tough record to defend. I don't mean to be unkind, but visually and optically, I think she looked like The Walking Dead.
Really? And do you think that Doug Ford will continue to grow his base, or does he already have his base who will not waver no matter what?
I think he's got his base. I'm not sure it grows from where it is, but it's so strong compared to the anti-Liberal vote. I think that third party, NDP, is the is the fulcrum part as to how much of a lead or a majority minority he can form.
But with Doug Ford's base, from the polls that we're seeing, is that enough to carry him into a majority victory at this point?
Well, there's the base that we call the Ford Nation. That's mostly a GTA 416-905 thing. Now we're talking about the province of Ontario. I think he can, grow in the sense that he connects with the average person. And he's got this nailed, from the experience he had with his brother and watching some of the Trump methodology in election. It's I'm for the little guy. Nobody's paying attention to you. Watch me. I don't have to promise anything specific. Just I guarantee it.
All right, John. I have to cut you off. I'm so sorry. Pleasure as well. And right now I'm going to send it outside to Roger Peterson, who's been outside with all the supporters.
All right, Sid. Who's really funny to watch right now. Kathleen Wynne came out. She was greeted by all her supporters out here, Andrea Horvath, and then all the Liberal supporters thought Doug Ford was going out the back, so they literally sprinted around the back right now. They've stuck around, but it's starting to wind down out here. And clearly everybody knows who they think won from each of these groups. If that's true, we'll have to wait and see. Of course, we're a month away from the election. For a little more on this, so let's head over now to Pam Cedal. Pam.
Roger, we're back at the Senator with a final word from our panel. Murtaza Haider, what does Kathleen Wynne need to do to gain some ground here?
I think she can actually go back and look at transparency. Her government wasn't transparent. You could see the fights they were having with the journalists. Everything had to be sought from an access to information. That's not the right way to run the government. I think she can promise transparency going forward. This is one thing she desperately needs to build confidence. It's a question of confidence. Elections are won based on electorate's confidence in your abilities and your intentions, but the kind of secrecy and the kind of walls that they constructed between themselves, their governments, and the electorate, that hasn't helped. And I think going forward, if she promises and delivers on transparency, maybe there's some hope.
Jody, do you think she has a hope?
I don't see it at this point, unfortunately. It makes me laugh when she says, I hope people look at our record and look at what we've done. And I thought, maybe you don't want them to look, because it sounds like people aren't happy with that. But it is really great just to see people engaged, even people with signs out front. And it's so important to take part in the process, even when it's very disappointing and sometimes it feels like your vote doesn't matter or they lie or flip-flop. Getting engaged and being involved is so important. Join a party, have a meeting with your representative. That really makes a difference.
Thank you, Jody. Desmond.
In terms of the current government, I think they're stalled for momentum. It doesn't look like they want to take any risks in this election to say anything that could be controversial, but I think that works against you when you've had 15 years cumulatively as a party.
Right.
When you're not saying anything new, your only hope is that your opponents mess up, and that's what it seems like the Liberals are waiting for.
I want to thank you all so much for being here tonight. It's been really interesting. Cynthia, back to you.
And that is it for our City Vote debate. You'll find highlights at citynews.ca. And coming up at 11, were the questions answered? We'll hear from the Torontonians who asked the questions in our debate to see if they were satisfied with what they heard from the leaders. And if you missed seeing the debate in 360, you can go to our Facebook page and check it out for yourself. Thank you so much for watching. Good night.